The unsolved murder of Philip Fraser, identity theft on the Glacier Highway. The northern stretch of British Columbia is one of the most rugged and isolated places on the continent, a vast expanse of mountains and forests where a person can vanish without a trace. For decades, this terrain, which includes the chilling Highway of Tears, has been a magnet for transient crime and a perfect location for a killer running from something. It was into this unforgiving wilderness that 23-year-old Philip Fraser drove in June 1988, embarking on a 2,300-mile journey that would lead him directly to an unidentified killer who wanted to steal his life. Philip Fraser was a young man with a clear path ahead of him. He was described as trusting and caring, but also a bit naive, a trait that may have ultimately cost him everything. Both of his parents were physicians, and Philip was determined to follow in their footsteps. He had recently enrolled in pre-med courses at Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. On Tuesday, June 14, 1988, Philip packed his belongings into his black 1983 Volkswagen Jetta, a two-door sedan with a sunroof. He left his home in Anchorage, Alaska, sometime between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m., beginning his long drive south. However, the trip met an early detour. Just 5 hours in, he experienced car trouble and was forced to set up camp outside the Alaskan town of Torque. He called his parents that same evening to inform them of the setback, an initial delay that cost him 2 additional days. Philip was unknowingly nearing the end of his journey, and an encounter at a desolate roadside stop would soon put his life in the crosshairs of a ruthless, transient stranger. The fatal meeting occurred on the late afternoon of Saturday, June 18, 1988. Philip pulled into the parking lot of the 40 Mile Flats Cafe, a gas station and restaurant in northwestern British Columbia, about an hour south of Dease Lake. Unbeknownst to him, a mysterious hitchhiker was already there. The suspect had been dropped off earlier by the driver of a dark-colored pickup with a light-colored stripe. The driver didn't even enter the cafe before leaving. The cafe owner, Gay Frockledge, immediately felt uneasy around the stranger. She watched him, noting to her daughter, Tina Frockledge, "We've got a winner here." Gay was so uncomfortable that she wouldn't leave her daughter alone with the man. The hitchhiker was a physically and behaviorally unsettling figure. He was described as a Caucasian male, estimated to be in his early to mid-20s, between 5 feet 9 inches tall and heavy set, weighing about 230 pounds. He had a notable large beer belly that sometimes flabbily overhung his belt. He was unkempt, had stubble and, most distinctly, rotted or badly decayed teeth, including a rotting front tooth. His hygiene was poor. He emitted a strong, bad body odor. He was a chain smoker who held his American cigarettes cupped in his right hand like a joint and constantly bit his fingernails. As Philip finished whatever he was doing at his car, the hitchhiker approached. Philip, whose own 2 handguns had been confiscated by Canadian Customs just 3 days earlier, was suddenly vulnerable. He initially refused to give the man a ride, but the hitchhiker was persistent, running alongside the car as Philip began to drive away. Philip's trusting nature, or possibly a direct threat from the hitchhiker, overrode his intuition. He eventually relented and let the man into the black Jetta. This moment, the kind act of helping a stranger in a remote area, was the last time anyone saw Philip Fraser alive. Investigators believe the motive for the murder was opportunistic theft and identity assumption. The hitchhiker, having learned details about Philip's life, decided to execute the young man and steal his identity to start over. Shortly after Philip picked up the hitchhiker on June 18th, and before the night was over, Philip Fraser was killed. Based on the decomposition of his body when it was later discovered, the estimated time of death was around the time he went missing. The cause of death was determined to be multiple gunshot wounds from a handgun. He was found bullet-riddled, suggesting the killer shot him multiple times. The location of the murder was a significant, puzzling detour of Philip's intended route to Olympia. Philip's body was dumped in a gravel turnaround off Highway 37A, the Glacier Highway near Stewart, British Columbia. This remote area was roughly 9 miles from Mazieddin Junction and did not align with a direct route south. Online speculation suggests Philip may have intentionally driven this way, hoping to reach the US border checkpoint at Hyder, Alaska, to seek help from an authority figure and ditch the suspicious hitchhiker. Alternatively, the hitchhiker may have taken control and forced him to this remote spot for the execution. The hitchhiker immediately put his scheme into action. Just 8 hours after Philip was seen driving away from the cafe and shortly after Philip's likely murder, the hitchhiker appeared 200 to 250 miles south in the village of Kitwanga, British Columbia. There, he was encountered by a kind couple, Eddie and Pauline Olson. They spotted a stranded motorist, the killer, on Highway 37 near their home. The hitchhiker was driving Philip's black Jetta, claiming he was having car trouble. The Olsons offered to tow the car home and, in an act of enormous generosity, allowed the man to sleep in their basement for the night. During his stay, the hitchhiker introduced himself as Philip Fraser. He used the victim's life details to weave a convincing, albeit rehearsed, story. He told the Olsons that his parents were doctors in Anchorage and that he was headed to Seattle to begin medical studies. He even claimed to have been visiting relatives or working at a fish processing plant in Tok, Alaska, the same town Philip had camped near before meeting him. Despite the compelling story, his behavior was odd. He was nervous and secretive when answering simple questions. He complicated a simple transaction by carrying 2 separate wallets when he tried to pay the Olsons for their hospitality, and he paid them $20 in American money, though he had paid for his meal at the cafe in Canadian currency. The following morning, Monday, June 19, 1988, the hitchhiker managed to fix the Jetta, which only needed a broken fan belt, and drove off south sometime between 8:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. The killer's masquerade ended abruptly that same day. Approximately 12 hours after he left the Olsons' home, Philip's black 1983 Volkswagen Jetta was found on fire in a bay at the Carpool Car Wash in Prince George, British Columbia. The intense blaze was reported around 9:30 p.m. Prince George, the largest city in northern BC, is a major transportation hub. The fire, which completely gutted the interior of the vehicle, was intentionally set by the killer, presumably to destroy evidence like fingerprints or blood. Nothing of significance was found in the charred ruins. The killer had vanished. He had stolen all of Philip's crucial personal documents, including his passport, birth certificate, visa, credit cards, and checkbook. Investigators believe the hitchhiker intended to use these documents to make his escape, possibly to Seattle, but periodic checks confirm that none of these legal documents ever appear to have been used, leaving police without a financial or legal trail to follow. The stolen identity served its purpose. It maintained cover long enough for the perpetrator to disappear. The hitchhiker's brief period of identity theft significantly complicated and extended the subsequent murder investigation. When the burned-out Jetta was found, law enforcement was not yet certain Philip was dead. He was initially listed as a missing person and a potential homicide victim. The hitchhiker's success in posing as Philip led to numerous but ultimately false sightings of Philip. Tipsters reported seeing him at campgrounds hours past Prince George, suggesting he had abandoned his car and continued traveling east. Investigators from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police (RCMP) wasted precious time and resources traveling thousands of kilometers to follow these incorrect tips. The investigation was hampered by the vast isolated wilderness, a difficult environment for law enforcement coverage. Furthermore, at the time in 1988, law enforcement lacked modern tools like CODIS, DNA genealogy, and extensive camera surveillance, which would have been critical in a case involving a transient individual. It wasn't until July 27, 1988, 6 weeks after Philip was last seen alive, that his body was discovered by tourists. Face down in the mud at the remote gravel turnaround, his identity was positively confirmed 2 days later using dental records. The discovery confirmed that weeks had been spent searching for a missing person while the killer was actively using the victim's identity to travel hundreds of miles. The region where Philip Fraser was murdered is geographically, historically, and demographically predisposed to such unsolved violent crimes. The long forested distances between communities, the vast remoteness, and the general low density of settlement make it one of the best choices for an area to disappear in if you're running from something. The major road networks facilitate transient populations, and the area has a documented ominous history. The 450-mile stretch of Highway 16 running through Prince George is infamously known as the Highway of Tears, due to at least 21 women who have been murdered or gone missing there over 40 years. Sources note that more than one American serial killer has deliberately chosen the area to murder people because of its isolated conditions. The RCMP's official stance remains that the mysterious hitchhiker is the killer and that the motive was opportunistic identity theft. They believe the killer is familiar with the Toronto and Seattle, Washington areas. However, the lack of a resolution has spurred extensive online speculation that often questions the official narrative. Michael Wayne McGray, this notorious Canadian serial killer, was proposed as a suspect due to a physical resemblance to the killer's sketch and his connection to the Seattle area. Despite the speculation, the RCMP officially ruled out McGray. The reason for the ruling is that at the time of Fraser's murder in June 1988, McGray was serving a 5-year prison sentence for a 1987 robbery. Online commentators, however, continue to debate this ruling. Blair Adams' theory. The most prominent alternative theory, derived entirely from online research, suggests that the killer might have been Blair Adams, a Canadian man found dead under mysterious circumstances in Tennessee in 1996. Proponents point out that Adams matched the killer's age and physical description. Adams also lived in British Columbia and had ties to Seattle. The theory suggests that his strange, paranoid behavior in 1996 may have been triggered by the 8th anniversary of Fraser's murder. They also speculate that mysterious items found on Adams, such as car keys that didn't match his rental, could belong to Philip Fraser's stolen possessions. The key counter-argument is that photographs of Adams show a man with good teeth, which contradicts the killer's most distinct physical trait, rotted teeth. Other unsubstantiated theories have been floated, including that the killer was a transient man named Timothy Wayne Coulson, who had poor teeth and lived a transient lifestyle. Today, the killer remains unidentified, his full story and ultimate fate unknown. The murder of Philip Fraser remains one of the most compelling and tragic cases of identity theft gone violently wrong, forever linking the trusting student to the desperate, unkempt stranger he fatefully picked up on a lonely Canadian highway. If you have a mystery you think deserves a second look, or you just want to support the channel, like this video and join the investigation by subscribing. Stay curious, stay aware, and I'll see you on the next episode of Shadowline Mysteries.